Hello, and welcome to, I guess, an impromptu and special preview episode of Checkpoint Chat. My name is Alessandro Bobos. I'm joined by roguelike aficionado Matthew Figueroa.
The expert is
Expert.
my title.
Beaten Dead Cells,
Past my bedtime
beaten
even.
Hades.
You know me, so we'll get into it shortly. But this genre, this type of game is just, what can I say?
If you could chef kiss over the microphone.
If I could chef kiss all of these games, I would. I will.
Today, we're looking at Returnal, which is the latest PlayStation 5 exclusive, and it is definitely PlayStation 5. This is not a game coming to PS4. And it's made by Housemarque, who you might recall are the developers of Resogun, probably the best PS4 launch game. Next Machina, Alienation, Dead Nation, lots of games. Lots of
all these games I've never
shooters.
actually played.
Yeah,
So
very, very different games to what Returnal is, but also kind of the same? I don't know. So, Returnal, at its bare bones, is a rogue light, I guess. Third-person action roguelite with definitely the DNA of a bullet hell and arcade shooter. That's at least the impression I got in the first few minutes of playing.
So having never played any of the previous games, I do know what they look like. And there's definitely a signature something there, especially when the enemy shoots at you. It looks, it's got them big orbs of doom.
Yeah.
Which you have to avoid.
Nice slow-moving bullets, sometimes not so slow-moving bullets.
Yeah, but it does seem like this is them 100%, obviously. But, they're breaking out of their comfort zone, I guess, and going into a whole different genre, per se.
Yeah, so, this is a game that was revealed, way back, kind of with the PlayStation 5. And I think the biggest thing was, okay, Housemarque is trying a whole new type of game. But also, it's, as far as I can tell, the first time a game with a roguelite structure has been kind of pushed as a console system seller. I can't recall a game. This is normally a sort of genre reserved for very highly acclaimed indie titles.
Yeah, it's funny because it's almost like an early access thing,
Yeah.
Like you'll go to Kickstarter, it's like, hey, here's a new roguelite we're working on. You're like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of, it's cool because I think the genre is super, super cool. Most people know Hades from last year. It's the game that swept up so many awards and took kind of the gaming world by storm last year. So I think people are at least familiar with the format, but Returnal, as most of these games do, has its own spin on it. So you play as Celine, and the game opens with her crash landing on a planet which she seems familiar with, that has lots of hostile flora and fauna. And it doesn't take long for her to come across a body, which is, her body.
Her.
Yeah.
Dum dum dum. That's not a spoiler.
Yeah, it's literally
the point of the game.
First 30 seconds of the game. And she's completely aware of the loop that she finds herself locked in. You find audio logs left by your past self at past dead bodies of yourself, along with things like equipment and upgrades that will help you push through each new loop. So I think it's cool so far that, I don't know if it's by complete chance, but Hades was a great roguelite because I felt like it incorporated the story as part of the gameplay loop. And Returnal feels like, so far, it's definitely leaning into that.
Yeah, my first impression was exactly that, where it's not like a knock against the genre, but the games in the genre are not known for their stories. I think you and I often talk about Dead Cells, for example, where you play it for a few hours and you start getting the same dialogue options. Things start to feel samey, outside of the actual runs you're doing. Whereas Hades really is a thing of you can play it for so many hours and it's like, oh, I'm constantly getting new bits of story. I'm meeting different characters. I'm getting different things. And I mean, I think you and I have only played the first hour of Returnal.
Yeah, I think. But so we should preface that we are allowed to talk about the first two biomes, and the first two bosses. I have not even reached the first boss.
No, likewise. But even just in that first hour, it feels like it's almost like Hades in that sense, where it feels like as you play, you're going to unlock story, and it's actual narrative, not just bare bones. It's integral to the whole game.
And I think what's cool is that the first few runs are there to accommodate you to that flow. Like the first run definitely feels like a very small tutorial of sorts. Like you aren't fighting as many enemies, and it definitely puts you in a room where you're kind of meant to fail, so that you know that this is a game about learning from failure. And I felt like with each new run, I've slowly peeled away some of the mechanics that are present in the game. So like my first run was getting new weapons. You can only hold one weapon at a time.
Which I found so interesting.
Yeah, it was quite jarring.
You know how long it took me to realize, because it introduces you to the first weapon, and I'm like, cool, how do I switch back to my pistol?
Yeah,
and I'm like, hang on.
Yeah, I was pressing on the D-pad, and I was like, what is going on here? Like, so you can only have one weapon, and just like most roguelites, weapons you come across have different stats and different levels and do different amounts of damage, different types of damage, and you kind of have to weigh up that decision based on how you think the run is unfolding. So like the first run was introducing me to that. Then the run after that was like introducing me to things like mutations, which are temporary debuffs that you can take as a risk for getting some in-game currency.
Some gear, yeah.
You also get things like parasites. I don't know if you've come across parasites yet.
Don't think. What do they do?
So parasites are like these little aliens that latch onto your arm, and they give you both a buff and a debuff. So they kind of like balance out. And when the buff is kind of expired, because sometimes the buffs are like give you. I've only encountered like one or two, so I don't know the depth of them. But I assume some of them will give you like regeneration. The one I got was like, if I'm low on health, it's going to regenerate a bit of my health. So eventually that buff will wear out, and then the parasite just kind of like falls off. But there's a lot of variation so far between runs where I'm like picking up mutations and picking up parasites, and I'm like, wow, this really drastically changes how I am approaching the game so far.
Yeah. I mean, I found that games like this, obviously it feels like there's a lot to take in initially. But the game lays it out fairly straight. It's fairly straightforward the way it's presented to you. Like even, I suppose a good example is the map. Like it doesn't tell you to go, look at this icon or that icon, but it's just laid out so well that you'd know, like I need to go pick up that thing or explore that bit over there that I haven't seen. And the way you learn the game just feels, organic, which is cool. Like it's got the depth, obviously, which you just mentioned, but I don't feel like I'm overwhelmed with too much. I don't know if that was your feeling.
No, yeah, from the get-go, I don't think so. I think, like you said, the map is a super, super cool addition, because I think the map is also like annotated really well. Like some doors they look like those arches, and then some are triangles. And I've already learned that, okay, triangle doorways lead me to rewards, but I also have to like kind of backtrack and come back, and the arches are kind of like your progression doors.
So it's funny because you went by shape, I went by color.
Oh right, yeah, they color differently.
The white doors are progression, and the blue is loot.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of UI stuff that's thrown at you that didn't. So I played for about half an hour before realizing there was an active reload. I did not know that.
Oh yeah. No, so there is a pop-up that it says, open up the menu, but even just in the heat of battle, like it's very easy to forget that that's a thing.
Yeah, I mean the first few minutes I was like, wow, these reloads are so brutal. Like I'm fighting enemies that aren't even that like far into the game, and I'm just like, Jesus, they are really taking me out when I run out of ammo, and I run out of ammo frequently. But if you played a game like Gears of War, which kind of popularized this mechanic, when you run out of ammo, a meter shows up by your crosshair, and if you hit shoot at the right time, then you'll immediately reload your gun and you'll be back in it.
Yeah.
So I think the theme of this game really is just movement and speed, because holy shit, it is. I mean, your movement speed is so fast. Your dodge is really, really good, and it cools down really quickly. And the enemies are so mobile. Like, you are constantly moving around and constantly, like in a bullet hell shooter, it's a very fine balance between attack and dodge. This isn't just a full-on offensive type of third-person shooter, I feel like.
That sprint speed is real good.
It is so fast.
So fast.
At first, when I initiated it, I was like, wow, I can barely control this. Yeah.
I'm speed. Yeah. But I mean, speaking of the combat, I think what's exciting about this game is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like the first PS5 exclusive since launch, like a proper exclusive.
Yeah, I think the only ones since then have been, well, Demon Souls was one, that was at launch. Astros was one, that was at launch. Yeah, I think so. Actually,
it's like it's been a dry period, the console launch, and then when I booted up this game, I was like, I had this really cool moment. I was like, finally, like my next gen console experience, and because this is Housemarque a first party studio? Are they treated as such or not really?
I don't know if Sony owns them. I know. I mean, they have worked with Sony on so many exclusives.
So much, yeah.
But I actually don't know if the company... No, so they're still private.
Okay.
They're a game studio, a Finnish game studio, but they...
Yeah.
I mean, they've worked on a lot of games that only came to PlayStations, like Dead Nation was early PlayStation, Super Stardust, Delta, Alienation, Resogun, all early PlayStation. It was only like later on, like Nex Machina came to Windows as well.
Okay. No, but the reason I mentioned regardless is that this is a PS5 exclusive, and it seems like, it's a good excuse to finally make use of the controller, which feels very underutilized in a lot of the other titles I've played on the console.
Yes.
I mean, outside of, like Astro's Playroom and the other first-party stuff, even Demon Souls, like, didn't really do too much with it, now that I think about it.
Yeah. I think Demon Souls was like, this is really, really pretty, but the Astro Playroom is the one that you want to, like, feel all the vibrations on,
Yeah, but Returnal, it seems that Housemarque have actually, taken advantage of the controller. Like, before we get into actual mechanics, the fact that the vibrate feels like it responds to the environment. So it's got that good, you walk through rain, you feel the little pitter-pat on your controller.
Yeah, I was about to say that. That's like the first thing I noticed. Yeah. And it's so well done.
Yeah, and even the opening scene when you're flying in the ship, the vibration feels different, like to any other controller.
It feels far more refined. Like, it feels like it almost feels like someone at Housemarque worked for a year just on the vibration.
Yeah, it's like words out my mouth. I'm like, that is someone's job. Yeah. It's like, how do I make this feel in the controller?
It's crazy how good it feels. Like, it is. Yeah. I was telling Darren earlier today that it's probably the game since Astro's Playroom that has actually used the controller.
Used it, yeah.
I feel like since launch and since Astro's, really, the DualSense has kind of not been used. I mean, it's been used in shooters to, like, replicate a trigger, and that got real old real fast, but this is actually making proper use of the controller in a way that I think it differentiates itself from an Xbox, put it that way.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. So the way Returnal uses the DualSense is that each weapon has an alt fire, and how it works is when you use Alt2, you can half press it to just shoot normally, but if you full press it, you activate your alt fire. Now, when it introduced this, I was like, oh no, please don't force this on me. Like, I don't want to have to, because like you've said with shooters before, it's just like it gets a bit tedious after a while. But it feels like after the first 5-10 minutes, I'm like, oh, this makes complete sense. I'm now used to just half pressing, for my normal fire and then full pressing.
It's pretty
for
natural.
The alt fire.
Yeah.
It comes, I'm like, this is an actual proper execution that takes advantage of the controller in a good way. Look, whether that I feel that way after 5, 10, 20, 30 hours, however long this game is,
Mm.
remains to be seen. But in the first hour, I really feel comfortable with it, which is cool.
Yeah, there's an option in the options menu where you can invert the controls. So,
I legitimately thought about that.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know.
so you
I'll have to
can
experiment.
make the full press your aim down sights and then a half press your alt fire. And I must say, I messed around with it a bit because I was like, well, I'm definitely going to be aiming down the sights a lot more than I'm going to be using alt fire. But now that I've played it more, the pace of the game doesn't really. I feel like it doesn't want me to aim down the sights a lot. Like
It'll slow you down.
it slows me
actually.
down really, really hectically. So
Yeah.
and as far as I can tell, the game doesn't enforce like a penalty whether you're aiming down the sights or not. The only benefits I've seen to aiming down the sights is you get to see enemy weak points, like a red reticle comes
yeah.
up on whatever
It
part of their
shows
body.
yeah.
They get more damage on. But again, I don't know later in the game how mods and augments change that up. I mean, just in my first few runs, I've come across equipment that has changed the way combat flows and the way navigation flows as well. So I expect that to continue like expanding in all of the biomes.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how many different weapons are as well, because I've already played with like 4.
Yeah, same.
In
I
the
played
first
around
hour,
4 of
I'm like,
them,
holy
yeah.
hell. Yeah,
I kind of like that the shotgun.
I mean, it's a shotgun.
very
It's
good.
always going to be.
It's very
It's
good.
always going to be the thing.
There's
yeah.
also I mean the combat's fast. It's the bullet hell type shooting. You've got lots of, like you said, big glowy orbs coming at you. Enemies are very, very fast and very aggressive. But I feel like all of the arenas where combat occurs, like once it's died down, there's also a lot of exploration.
Yeah.
Like you have to really go out of your way to look for health. There are definitely parts there where there's all these chests and stuff hidden behind vines, and I'm like, I don't know how
And
to
I'm
break
like, how do I
these.
get there?
Yeah, so I can definitely see the building blocks of where each consecutive run is going to start like feeding into
Yeah.
the other.
I do wonder just on that. So did we say this before or after we started recording, where there's backtracking in the game? So with games in this genre, it's very much par for the course to just do runs, and you want to do them as quick as you can. When you get good enough at the game, that sort of thing. I don't mind the exploration because I'm still new to the game, but I wonder how to feel later on. Like, how do they keep giving you these big open areas to poke around, or do you sort of get a feel for them that you just know, like, oh, I've had this biome before, or this layout, I'm just going to go straight through the door there. Like, I don't know what the level of randomization is. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just I do wonder how that will break the flow in the long run.
I think those are, I mean, if you recall how long you played Hades for, these are the sorts of things you only start kind of getting a grasp of like a handful of hours in. So yeah, I mean, an hour is nowhere near enough to kind of understand the full scope of the game. But yeah, the backtracking is interesting. It's it breaks up the flow nicely. Yeah.
Yeah, it caught me off guard the first time because you walk into a room, it's like, oh, here's this item you need, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, like a key or something.
But what now?
Yeah.
And it's you just have to figure out like, oh, I have to go back to that door I saw. But I mean, it does make it pretty obvious. I was just taken aback by it because I mean, as the game starts to open up, you're not just getting one big key for one big door. It feels like there are going to be a lot of splitting pathways that you can take.
There's even times where it feels almost like Doom. It's like you need this red key for this red door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn it, I don't have this red key.
I
even know which red door you're talking about, the one with all the sentries.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, I don't have this key.
I think the one thing that's tripping me up, and maybe this is just because of the playtime I've had, is I do not know the names of all the resources, and I don't know what I'm picking up half the time.
No. Like, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think either of us have actually dabbled with permanent upgrades.
I think the permanent, well, again, I've come across a place where I can stand and look at different stone structures and buy certain things.
Yeah.
And one of those things was a permanent upgrade.
Okay. So, because I also came across that, I didn't realize one of those was permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
It seems like
how
your
that actually
equipment,
works.
the stuff that you find that sort of like ties into the story because it almost triggers like a cutscene, is the sort of stuff that is persistent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some cool story bits in here that I don't really want to get into here because this is a preview and I want to keep it as light on spoilers. But if you've been watching the trailers, you'll know that there are certain instances where you play the game from a first-person perspective and you kind of delve into Celine as a character, which I think is pretty cool. Far more of a character-driven roguelite. And again, I can only really think of Hades as a recent example of something similar to this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. It is really, really pretty.
It's super pretty.
It runs really well so far, and the game actually recommends you play with headphones. I tried it with headphones, and yeah, I can't tell you for certain if it sounds immeasurably different from, speakers that I have, like surround speakers, but it sounds pretty great with headphones, and it sounds pretty good with 3D audio enabled, which personally I don't think is the case with many games on the PS5. I think Demon Souls is the one that sounds really good, and now this. So
yeah, I need to test that out. So
yeah, sounds. You can do the calibration with the water in the settings menu. It's really weird.
What?
Yeah, it's like, where does the water sound like on your ears? And you're like, what the hell does that mean? Like,
it's bottom left of my left lobe.
yeah, it's super bizarre. But
and PlayStation's like, I got you, fam. Now go play Returnal.
Yeah.
Where's that alien coming from? Yeah, but like just to echo your sentiments, I've also just from my limited time with the game, I'm really enjoying it. And like we said at the top of the episode, these sorts of games are dangerous because I can very easily get sucked in and just snort them right up.
they're fantastic little time sinks.
There's no other way to explain it. So just, this is my next Monster Hunter maybe.
I think it's really cool that we're getting like a roguelite with the sort of production that only a first-party game could give it.
Yeah.
I think that's super interesting, and I think Returnal isn't just this isn't, it's a roguelite that just packaged with prettier visuals. I think so far it's got its own ideas to combat and exploration that I think are super interesting, and I can't wait to play more.
Well, it'll be interesting just on that. This is Housemarque a first party like AAA? It was a double A, I guess.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of their previous games are more like arcadey titles, so it's hard to say. Yeah,
but I mean, if a game like this reviews well and it's like critically acclaimed, it will be interesting to see if some of the bigger studios go, maybe this is a genre we haven't explored. Ubisoft and EA and all these other people next year, like, yeah.
Especially now that there's examples of like being able to tell a story that is contextualized with the gameplay. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's really cool. Real Groundhog Day stuff. That's what game stories are going to be from now on.
It's great.
Yeah, it's great. The next God of War is going to be a roguelite.
I mean, I wouldn't mind.
We'll just say boy, and Atreus will be like, but wait, you just came out of that door.
Although God of War did have that similar sort of feel with its one realm.
Yeah.
What was it called? Was it Misselheim?
No, Misselheim was the combat challenges. It was
the one with the maze. You know what I'm
the
talking
maze
about?
one.
It's like the
I
maze that
remember
shift.
one,
yeah. It's kind of there.
I mean, Cory
Just give me
Barlog,
that
just
with
call us
different
up, man. We
progression.
got you.
Yeah, we've got ideas. Call us.
But yeah, that's Returnal. The review embargo lifts kind of like this time next week, or actually just a bit earlier, because this time next week will be launch. So yeah, I'm excited to play more. I think it's pretty great so far. And I'm keen to talk about this more when we both put a lot more time into it.
Watch the space.
Yeah,
There'll
watch
be a
the
lot
space.
more time going into it.
If you've enjoyed this video and watching us fumble our way through Returnal, make sure to give this video a like, maybe subscribe to the channel. And if you like podcasts, we do one every week on a Monday.
Have a podcast.
Checkpoint Chat Podcast. And you can find us on all those lovely platforms. That Apple, that Spotify, that Google.
You can check the links in the description. I often throw them in. Not often. I always throw them in.
He often,
So
every now
there
and
you
then
go.
when he feels like it. Then
Every now and
he
then,
throws
yeah.
but thank you, Matthew. We'll
Oh,
convene
thank you.
again when we can talk more about Returnal.
we'll convene. We'll break away.
We'll break
now and
bread and talk about bullets.
Explore. What is the planet even called? Like, I don't even know yet.
Oh, I know the ship is called Helios, and
Helios.
I can't remember what the ship's called. There's so many
And then
words.
the main character's name is Celine Gomez. Hey.
This has been a great video. I need to delete it from the internet now.
Oh, nice. Deleted from your memory. Bye.
Thanks for joining us. We'll have more Returnal soon. Okay, bye.
Yes. Goodbye.